Welcome back to Tawana Talks, where I believe leadership is a dance everyone's invited to, even you with two left feet. Each week is a new track where we are chatting about the moves you make to lead yourself and others to success. So lace up those dancing shoes and let's dive into creating those supportive steps together. Ready to move with purpose? Let's hit the dance floor. Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in to Tawana Talks. I am Tawana, and I am the founder and CEO of TL Collaborative Coaching and Consulting, where my focus is on nurturing leaders for lasting success. And this podcast is where we actually get the chance to explore the essence of just that, thoughtful conversations with people and telling their really impactful stories. And so I'm really excited to introduce my guest today. Here I have Ashley Gorman, who I had the pleasure of meeting and hearing some of her passion and her work that she does. And we met in Charlotte at an event where we were kind of in a reciprocity circle. And that was a pretty awesome time that we had there. But before we dive into some great conversations, let me just tell you a little bit more about this fabulous woman here. So Ashley is a proud wife and a mom of three very energetic girls. She is also a former teacher, which is near and dear to my heart, and a turnaround school leader. During her family's relocation, she transitioned into mentoring and coaching school leaders full time. She also coaches and develops women leaders in other industries who are striving to overcome, get this, burnout while continuing to lead with excellence. So you can see why I am so interested in having this conversation in here. Her mission is to provide thought partnership and support that makes leadership sustainable and joyful, all encompassing of my core values. So I am really, really excited. So now you see why I really want to have this conversation with you, Ashley. So why don't you just go ahead and tell me more, because that's so much in there.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive in and have this conversation with you today about like all things in our background and life and leadership. It's one of my very favorite things to do. There's not a lot more to say because you gave such a great introduction. But I just think I've grown in the last 4 or 5 years. I really feel like into this space coming out of school leadership, which was the choice to leave that was both a choice and because we were making a big relocation. We wanted our girls to have the opportunity to have a much more diverse experience as they became teenagers and grew into adulthood. And I think in that process, as a family, we've all really grown in a deep way that we didn't anticipate. But I think for me, one of those places has been really in zooming into the need for high achieving women in leadership and the support that we need and we crave, but that is not typically there in the orgs that we work for and can sometimes even be viewed as like taboo. Or if we ask for mentorship or we ask for coaching or we ask for more development, we somehow feel like it's perceived as we're saying like we're not enough in some way. And so we kind of go into these spaces where we create more silos and more loneliness for ourselves, which just perpetuates that burnout and gets some of us like jumping from space to space and org to org, like trying to find the thing that's not going to, create that burnout. But really the work starts within us and having the right support to like keep us on that growth path where we can lead at really high levels and still kind of have everything we want in our outside of work life too. And I believe that's really possible for all of us. And I see so many of us struggling with it, especially women who are new to leadership. And I've just gotten really passionate about how can I help that experience look different than what I experienced as a new leader.
Yeah, I love that. Like the whole notion of taking something that you've experienced that was not designed for you to do well and pulling out of that, what are the things that I can do that I didn't get to help it be different for others? I mean, and that is like a true mother's nature, right? Like I feel like sometimes, and what you said, what I kind of heard in my mind when I was just kind of thinking about it was like us women, we, like you said, we oftentimes we don't get the support we need and we don't feel like we can show up, but we forget that we birth children, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yes.
remember there was a TikTok going around some years back, and I say some years back, like TikTok has been around forever. It's just something that I'm in, but it was
Yeah.
something that I saw, like the voiceover, and it was a Jerry Seinfeld comedy stand up from that, and he says, when you look at your children, he says, I made humans, like, and I'm their leader, and
Yeah.
they listen to me. Like,
Yeah.
that's major. Like, we birth children. And I just saw something yesterday where I think it was a minister or something, and he was just like, you get these kids and they're like, all right, see you later. And you're like, oh, you're not going to go home with me? Like, this is it? Like, this, I have to. And so when we step into leadership of organizations and schools, it's kind of that same thing. And I don't ever want anyone to think, and I said this when I was a leader in the school, is I don't view my leadership as their children and I'm the authority like that. But I do view it in the same aspect as I'm responsible for your nurture and your care. And we do that with children every day. We have to figure these things out and make decisions based on whatever is going on. And so I love that you said that, being able to take that experience, and because we do that with our kids. Like, I know what it was like when I was younger, and I kind of feel like this feels the same thing. So I got to go with my gut feeling in my mind and my experience and all of those things. So that leads me to season one. You had mentioned and the pre-session questions about a particular episode that says, I don't need your help. And in that episode, I did talk about my little one, kind of just, not kind of, she did not kind of say it. She said it. I don't need your help. Like, and I was like flabbergasted, like, yes, you do, you're 4. But in the whole aspect and the grand scheme of things, in that time, I was actually also the principal in a school. And so
Mhm.
hearing that helped me to hear what my staff was saying, and not in those words. But back to your point, one particular leader, and I said this in that talk, was your natural state is nurture. And so you are setting up things as a nurturer and a provider, as like a parent, but a leadership state, you have to be able to release and give so that people can understand, I don't need your help per se, because let me fail forward. And I think those are some of the things that you just kind of so well spoken in what you just said. Like, that just shows me like it's linear. So tell me more about like your experience in leadership, that you, what you did not get and the things that you saw were needed. And that's kind of loaded. So I want to say the next question, but we'll gather that. But like, the things you did not get, tell me about that experience and how you transform that into being a help for women like you, like me,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, what you just named from that episode is just really resonant, because it's a really specific growth area that I'm working on for myself. Because as a helper, right, and as a fixer, I'm more a fixer than a helper, but like there's this blend in me that can sometimes make that, it's very powerful, but it can sometimes be very detrimental too. And like, I just kind of want to double click on what you said around the best way that we can help sometimes is by empowering, and that being the nurturing versus the doing it for, or even versus doing it with. And I do think, to your point, our parenting teaches us that.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you're in leadership and you're parenting kids as they grow, like, you're just having so many downloads and uploads around, oh, this is not landing with my 15-year-old. No wonder it's not landing with a group of adults. Like, of course. And so like, I just want to double click on that, because I think it's really important for people to hear both of us talk about this like deep desire to nurture and support. And that also looks like sometimes like being there to catch someone before their face hits the sidewalk.
Right.
Like, I'm going to let you fall all the way to that moment before you actually get really hurt. And then I'm going to brush you off a little bit, and then I'm going to push you again. And I'm really working on that in every role that I play in my life, being more of an empowerer and less of a fixer. And I think I learned that originally from my leadership experience.
Yeah.
When you go into, I did not know when I went into leadership that my school was in a turnaround situation. I learned that about 3 weeks in. I got an email from the State Department that we were the bottom 5% in the state. And what was interesting about that is like, I had worked there as a teacher for 12 years.
That's a true game of tag. Tag, you're it. Like, wait,
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah. And it wasn't like what I deeply felt was like this real sense of urgency and panic. But I knew that I was working with an entire team of people that also didn't see this coming. Like there are typically some signs and symptoms along the way. And we were just so in it every day, and such a strong community in a small community that we didn't know, like there was no way I could turn around and present that to a staff at 3 weeks in, when even that my leadership role, came swift and unexpectedly too. But I made a pretty big misstep that I think if I had had someone, even if it was someone that I was reaching out to on the regular, like just to pick their brain in that first 3 weeks, if I had gone out and like found my own mentor, I didn't have that. I could have run my strategic plan for that moment by them and had that thought partnership. And I chose to like keep leading and working us through improvement without pulling the rug out from anyone. Like I leaned into like, I'm going to take care of you so hard, and we're going to fix this together, that once it's fixed, I'll tell you that there was a problem. Like I was truly trying to like mom my staff in that first 6 months. And it wasn't until I did latch on to a mentor. It was very informal. I was kind of asked to go on some classroom visits with someone, and it had a really profound impact on me. And I just kept reaching out to that person over and over again. And through that, developed that relationship where I could, the next time I got an email from the State Department, because it happened 2 or 3 more times that year, I could go to that person and say, okay, here's the message. Here's what I'm thinking or planning. Can you think through where this is going to go well and where this is not going to land? Because I do need to empower this group of people, not just protect them from reality all the time, but like finding that for myself was really important. But it also like made that click happen. That was like, day one, knowing I was new and it was a tough situation, that should have been my first ask. Where can I find a coach, a mentor, someone that I can reach out to when I need something, even if it's just on call, like just to know to ask those questions that I didn't realize at the time. I thought, they've put me in this spot, I'm supposed to know what to do, I'll figure it out. And we did figure it out, but the progress wasn't as fast because I wasn't willing to reach out for my own support quite soon enough.
But I hear you're saying like, I should have reached out, but what type of environment is set up for leaders that creates the okay to ask? Like you mentioned, like when you ask, you feel like our failure. Like I remember my children, my oldest children being younger, I never asked for a babysitter because in my mind, I thought me getting a babysitter means I'm an unfit mom and I can't take care of my kids. And I would always think like, and is that like some mental trash that I've learned through just experiences of life and seeing other people? But it was like, yeah, if my kids can go, then they can go. Unless and literally I physically said this, unless I'm painting a house and there's fumes, then they can be there. And now it's like, oh my gosh, that was so toxic. Like to not ever, and then we went through COVID and I have a 9-year-old and she was 4 and I was like, oh my God, you're not supposed to be with your kids 24/7. Like this is unnatural, right? But what type of environments what is the history? And I don't know if this is a question that can be answered, but why are environments not set up to, one, allow you to feel comfortable to ask, or 2, make that the norm where when putting you in that position to say, and here is the support that is going, why do the people who put people in that position not realize that, oh, this is going to require a certain level of support? We can't just expect this person to come. We do it in presidency. They come, they bring them in and they have some support, but then we say, oh, if it's not done in this amount of time, then you're over. We do it with superintendencies. like our current superintendent is there and she's having her time of switching some things around, but the previous one didn't get enough time to strategically plan some things through and not have the support. It's like, oh, you were great in this role, you'll be great in this. It happened to me in my previous role, so you'll be fine. And it's like, you're fine means that you should know what to ask for. And it's like, I don't know if I can, and I'm not really sure. So you have a level of unconscious incompetencies, but you're thinking like that support system should be there to recognize the need. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yes. Yes to all those things. I think like if we peel back that onion very deeply, like we get to this root cause that I think you're naming, which is like, it's a both and. It's both that as women stepping into leadership, we are wired to prove ourselves on our own. Like as much as we are our own superpower, we are also our own worst enemy sometimes. And that is always really hard for me to hear, but I'm really blessed to have a spouse that will like call it in for me. Like when I'm crossing that line of putting way too much on myself at too high of an expectation, like for him to pull back and say like, you're doing this to yourself. No one is asking you to operate at this level alone, but you're like continually trying to prove that you can. And I think that we're pre-wired for that in some ways because we're always trying to prove that we belong in the space. I know, like, I didn't even know gender bias was a thing when I stepped into leadership. I was like, I work in a school, like we all get paid the same based on the scale. And I know tons of women in school leadership. And I even know women who were leading high schools. And it was like running into a brick wall face first, like we're pre-wired for that. And I also think there is this like unconscious thought and theory around leadership that when we are going to hire someone to put them into a leadership role, and a lot of times we do that from being like straight out of an individual contributor role. Someone's a phenomenal teacher. Let's make them a coach. Someone's a phenomenal coach. Let's make them a school leader. Someone's a phenomenal, they're phenomenal on the production line. They should be director of operations. And I believe those people should be, but the competency set is completely different when we make those jumps. Right. And I just think the like thought leadership is lagging behind some of the conversations that we have in the circles we're in around. It is so clear that there should be a transitional leadership development system at every level. And like lots of people are talking about it, but nobody really knows how to do it yet or how to invest in it. And I get really excited when I talk about that because I think women like us in the circles that we're in, like we can be part of that catalyst, especially in the area that we live where orgs are starting some learning and development for managers. Like they're thinking about, oh, they don't just need orientation. We need more than that. What does that look like? Is it first 100 days? Is it first year? Like, what should that look like? Like there are these little moments of recognition now, but I think it's just lagging behind the need because I don't know about you, but when I start to work with school leaders in leadership coaching, I have boards of education that we have to have deep conversations with to approve that support because they struggle to make the connection between that leader's support and learning improvement, number one. And so you have to be really explicit about how we make those connections of impact, right? And so when then you're working with other organizations, you've got to make that direct connection to revenue. How is me supporting this middle manager you just took from an individual contributor going to help your bottom line? But the second piece of it is like they have some deep concern. Like, so we hired someone who needs coaching.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm like, but I want you to think about every moment in your life that you have grown a ton. You have not done that alone.
That's true. That's
so like true. Just leading people through reflection of what is actually true and saying, okay, now that we know better, let's do better. And let's make sure every individual contributor, every teacher, every instructional coach, like whatever industry we're talking about, they have support to like really lean in and be excellent in the first year, because guess what? That's going to help your bottom line. Because what are you not going to have? You're not going to have all this turnover.
That's the part. Yes.
We're not going to burn out. Like leadership is going to be sustainable, and you're like coaching and molding into the vision of that org, into that system, into what's true from the very beginning. You don't have to backtrack. We don't have to step back and fix. We can just support from the beginning. But I think it's just a lot of these conversations, and like, let's keep having them. Let's keep elevating them, and let's see what kind of an impact we can make in orgs to make sure there's support for leaders at every level. And like, it's the status quo. In the same way, every sports team has 3 or 4 coaches to support different types of contributors on the team. Like that works in schools. Sports analogies work with schools.
Yeah, sports analogies work in schools. Children analogies work. And I love it that you say, when you know better, you do better. And so when we think about who do we put in place to help develop these transitional plans, who more than people who have experience not having that support to be able to develop. Okay, because what you're realizing, you have these gap finders. I'm a gap finder. I'm like, oh wait, and in a lot of my roles, I'm like, oh wait, something doesn't seem right. Something's not transitioning. Something's not connecting. This road is leading to a dead end. It's not matching the vision. I need to come up with a plan to make this work. And a lot of people's feathers were ruffled. Like, what do you mean? Or what do you mean you need support to do that? And you're like, because what you're asking me to do is not sustainable, one, and two, it's not like it's unrealistic. As you put it on paper, like there's no way that we need another person if this is the case. But I think about what you said when you were like, when organizations or schools or boards or upper level management or executives are like, wait, what do you mean we need to, this person's incompetent, so they have to have a coach? That's how it's looked at. And so I put it in perspective of like, again, children, like when you have a baby and they can't walk, you don't say, I got this person that's inadequate. They can't talk, they can't walk. Well, they need some guidance and some coaching to be able to get there. It's in them, but we gotta pull that out. And so, like you said, when we transition, teachers, like I transitioned from a principal to a COO. I'm all of my professionalism was in instructional, strong, sound instructional. I was a great instructional leader, a great teacher. So I knew pedagogy. I knew all of the operations of all of those. But now I'm moving to a level of fully taking on the entire organization of operations. And it's like the skill set that I have in being a school leader at the school leader level, those there are transitioning skills that, translate into this position, but I still need guidance and coaching on how all this other stuff works, budgeting and all of those things. How do I take these skills and make them work in here and impact? And I could figure it out, but the amount of time that we're using for me to figure it out is not efficient use of time. We need to have somebody to help coach and guide and develop that has done it. And so then we can say, okay, now this is how it's supposed to work. And now we have the strategic plan. It's like, actually, you shouldn't be the only person doing this,
Right.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yes. And what I see a lot of times now is the first sort of the gut instinct is to go, oh, so instead of moving someone who has tremendous potential into a role who might need support and coaching that we have to invest more in, we'll like go look for someone to move laterally. Well, sometimes that works. And also, that's a different type of transition. Now you're pulling someone in who doesn't know your people, doesn't know your vision. Maybe they're not aligned to your vision. Maybe that process is going to mean a lot more restructuring or a lot more stepping back and changes to a strategic plan that we've already committed to a group of staff and employees, and actually costs us a lot more outcomes and revenue over time than if we had said, hey, core values are aligned, very aligned with philosophy and vision, and we are going to ensure that anytime someone moves into a role and it needs transition, we're going to make sure there's some type of transition time, even if it's, a couple of days. It'd be great if it were a few weeks, but if we can get a couple of days, fantastic. And as part of like, this is just how we do things. You also have a coach through the first year. You also have a mentor through the first year who is outside of the org, because that creates so much trust and transparency.
Yep.
Like that, like when I think about some of the compensation studies and things like that I've read over time, the cost of mentorship and support is actually so much more feasible and has so much higher ROI
Right.
than let's give them time to figure it out.
Yeah. I
Because
feel like I'm looking in the mirror right now. I feel like really like you're like this. And it's so refreshing to know that I'm not crazy to think this way. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is, it's like, it just makes so much sense. And to actually physically be in a situation where coaching is looked at from a executive level as being in for people who are incompetent. But when you,
yes,
like you said, we transition, if we're talking about education, we transition teachers to coaches because teachers need coaches. We don't call them incompetent because we have someone there, because it speaks directly to what you're looking for in your growth in student achievement and scores and things of that nature. But when we're looking about organizationally, individuals need coaching. Even if you've been in that role for a while, having, because times change, you're dealing with different generations, all of those things. And so in where I was, we had executive whole organization kind of coaching, which then recommended that I, moving into this new major role, have an individual strategic planning coach. In my mind, I was like, this is great. Yes, this is phenomenal. We can kind of, because this is the first time this position has ever existed, we can set this up the way that it needs to be. I have strong instructional background. I am a strategic planner. Great. My leader looked at it as, I'm thinking we're on the same line. Like, this is great. Was like, as if like it was like a action plan. Like, I just rode into this role a week.
yeah,
I was just looked at as an action plan. You know, I was gonna pick this up and just be like, yeah, great. And now you're like, well, you need a coach because you can't do it. And so this is really like an action plan. And I was flabbergasted at, I'm thinking, oh my God, like this is how you're looking at this? Like that is crazy. But I want to go back to something that you said, which I think we kind of bypassed it, but it's so important. And it's really granular, but I want to look at it in a grand scheme. You mentioned that you have a spouse that is very supportive in recognizing when you are kind of self-sabotaging, if you will, and taking on those types of things. And so I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, what support kind of looks like in these various sectors. You talked about, you know, we talk really strong in education, which is great. And you're an entrepreneur yourself, and even as being a leader because you're a parent, that's leadership. So how important, we've kind of fleshed into there, is support, but what else can it look like? You know, having that person there to kind of bounce things off and help you guide it. But like mentioning that your husband's able to say that, having that authenticity in that space to say, hey, stop it.
yeah,
Put it out.
yeah. And that is his role. Like sometimes we even talk about, I'm like, can you frame that a little differently? Because I don't really respond well to like, just like stop. Just stop what you're doing. So now
I don't know what stop means.
yeah, it's
Does
like
it
a
mean
joke.
like don't go anymore, or does it mean like slow down?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point to bring up, because I think support looks different in different seasons that we're in. And that's not just seasons of life. Like a season can be like this particularly like stressful or high demand moment. Right. And I think for a lot of leaders, like it's budgeting season. That can be one of those moments, right? Across industries like February, March, it's draft budget season. So I think that can look like, let's sit down and actually do the work together. I think sometimes support looks like, let me sit beside you and let's do it together. And I don't believe that's a deficit. I believe that's growth opportunity. I think, to your point, many times it is looked at as deficit. Or I've even I've been reading about some orgs lately where you can you can have a mentor or a coach, but you have to apply and be chosen. And it's like, that feels restrictive in a lot of ways, because you have people who are really wanting to grow and develop, but you're asking them to prove that they're worth that. And I believe everybody is worth that.
Right.
And so I think it can look like sitting down and doing it side by side. I think sometimes support looks like accountability. Sometimes I just need my mentor. Like yesterday, my mentor gave me a nudge and was like, are you still going to send me that stuff to review that you wanted feedback on? And I had asked about it like last week. And because I got stuck, I got in a creative block. I started overthinking. I had put it away. I needed a nudge. Like he nudged. I wanted to deliver on getting that feedback. Like it's ready to go. I can now, execute that training next week at a high level because I had that accountability. So sometimes I think it's like warmly demanding accountability. I think sometimes it looks like just being in a space with a group of people. It's like have the conversations to learn from one another and get that like really energetic like brainstorming going, like what we've experienced in the circle that we're in, where we meet once a month and everybody kind of shares what they're doing. And we just like lean into supporting the challenges, but also like, have you thought about this? Like sometimes it's true, just thought partnership. And I really think that if you're out there looking for your own support system, like let's say having a mentor that you have to invest in at a financial level is not on the table. And for so many of us, it's not. I think you want to look for those different levels of support. Yeah. My mentor who holds me accountable is not the same person who sits side by side with me when I need to like develop and brainstorm. And by the same token, that person is also not part of that group that I put myself into to get that type of support that pushes me to grow and think in a different way. So in addition to that, I wish, and my hope and my dream is that leaders at all levels will have coaches in the future that are like formalized coaching opportunities. I also believe that if we really want to grow and develop, we don't have to do it alone. We can create those systems for ourselves if we just know where to look, or if we just are willing to dig deep enough for it.
Yeah, I love that. I like that you mentioned the varying levels of support, but then the varying types of support. So you can have a culminating support system. I mentioned in a previous talk about having individuals in your life that see the you that you don't see, right? And being able to have those individuals and be in that space like your husband, like in that space where it's true authenticity, true transparency, and allowing that person and being able to select those people that are not using that to your detriment, are not using that to bring you down or tell you that you're not enough. And those are the people that when you think you're operating in a certain space, they're able to look and say, that's not what's happening right now. This is what I do. And I'm fortunate that I have adult children. I used to run filter through things all the time through them when I was principal because a lot of my staff were their age, right? They're in their 20s. And my son would say, don't say it like that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is what I said. Well, he was like my true first chat GTP, him and my oldest daughter. She'll be 28, he'll be 25. And I would say things like, well, this is what I want to say. These are the points that I needed to make. How would you receive it? And they're like, well, first do this and do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm like, I had no idea that that's how that was coming off or coming across. And I'm really grateful for them. And so just being able to lean in, to lean on other individuals who can see the you that you are not seeing. I think that's really important. So in the beginning, we talked about something profound with regards to, you had mentioned like in the beginning about if I would have only asked, and I had mentioned kind of piggybacked that off of saying like if they would have only offered those types of things. So for the leaders who will be listening to this, and I say leaders, I really like to stamp for everyone that's listening is, for me, a leader is anyone that's woke up this morning, because you have to lead yourself. So it's not just if you're working in a school, or if you're working in executive, or if you're an entrepreneur, it's just people in general. And
Yes.
so for those individuals who are looking and listening and hear themselves in us, or see themselves in us, what would be like the key takeaway things that you would want them to hear when going into a space on how to identify what type of support is there and ask for support that they may not even know that they need?
I think the number one takeaway is view the support that you crave as a necessity of whatever it is you want to accomplish. We all have a vision. That vision is really a blend of what we want to be true in work, in life, in parenthood, in relationships. Like, we have something that we're always striving for, because anybody listening to your podcast is a lifelong learner and a lifelong grower. And so we're always reaching, right?
Right.
In that space, also go into the ask from your intent of the ask, not how you think that ask will be perceived.
Well, that's good.
I think the reason I didn't ask for support, and also if support had been offered to me in that first year, I would have said, no, I'm good. I know I would. Like, I can look back at 32-year-old Ashley and be like, she would have flat out said, no, I got it. I got this. I'll let you know. And my former boss can tell you the number of times I said to him, I got this. I'll let you know. Because I viewed if I needed coaching, that the other person would perceive that I was not confident in my own competency and my own potential. And it took me many years to finally come around to this place that is actually not what's true. I knew I needed coaching and support. I didn't want anybody else to think I needed it.
Right.
But we got to own that we need it, and that we need it to grow, not because there's a deficit, because we've got to grow up another generation who sees getting support and learning and growing on the regular as like, this is how we do life. Our kids have to know
That's
that.
important. And that's so good that you said that, because even you had mentioned another talk that I did, like, I'm not want to be a little friends. Part of recognizing that you need support is part of maturity.
Mhm.
You know, as little kids, like saying like, I got it, I don't need it, I got it. And you're like, yeah, actually, you don't. Like, I was arguing with my daughter the other day because we have this gratitude sheet that kind of helps us think outside the box. And I'm like, Carrie, you want the sheet? I don't need it. I'm like, okay, so what's your gratitude? I don't know. I can't think of one. I'm like, well, here, take the sheet. I don't need it. I'm like, what type of crazy mind tricks are you playing here? And I'm like, well, I'm going to use it, and I'm an adult, and I'm going to use it because it helps me. Like, it's not a sense of weakness. She feels like it's like, if I get help, I'm weak. And I'm like, actually, if you get help, you're mature. Because you realize I don't have to put myself into this internal turmoil because I have something there. And so, yes, like you said, growing up a generation, but that generation could be inside you that you need to grow out of.
Yeah. And you just said something like, I don't need it because I'm weak. And I think like that's the linchpin. I think so often when we know we need support, we go into it like we formulate the pitch for the support, and we formulate it from like, how am I going to convince them that I need support? And we come at it from a deficit place. Let's not do that. Let's look at the strengths that we have that we know can become superpowers. And let's ask for the support to grow those superpowers, because we already have that strength schema developed. So we're going to grow more from positive reinforcement and continued growth in our strengths that will make exponential impact than like pinging on this thing that we're already beating ourselves up about all the time. And now we're going to go ask for support and be like, so I really actually suck at this. Can I get some help with whatever? No, don't do that to yourself. That's not who we are. Ask for the strengths-based support, model that's how we ask, like get that mindset rolling wherever you are, whether it's with parenting, whether it's in your relationship, whether, you know, I love your frame around if you woke up today, you're a leader.
Mhm.
Like before 7 a.m. today, I'd like full out strategic planned life with an 11-year-old.
Right.
Like that's leadership. Like there's leadership maturity that comes with that. And I just think if we stop focusing on all the deficits we see in ourselves,
Yeah.
first of all, there's so much healing that comes from that. But then if we look to support the strengths that we have so that we can grow at this like rapid exponential rate, guess what's going to happen? That focus on those deficits that don't really matter anyway, it's going to melt away.
Yeah, that's true. I
And
kind of coined the phrase like strength in training. This was years back when they were like, what are your weaknesses? I'm like, you mean my strengths in training? Because why are we looking at it from that perspective? And so I love that framework of like, let's change the narrative of let's change the norm of the requirement. So like if when they ask like what's your desired salary? Well, here's my desired expectations, my salary of this and the support is this. Like making that's a requirement for me to do the job. I need
yes,
these hours, I need this, money, I need these benefits. And part of that benefit is support. And this is what I feel like it looks like. And if you can't give that to me, then this may not be the space for me.
yeah, maybe we're not aligned in that
And
way.
if more people start to do that, more organizations realize like, oh wait, this is a real thing. Like we're not getting hires because we're not giving them what they need.
Yes,
It's a relationship.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, again, it's like I'm looking in the mirror. Like this is amazing. I love this. Because this is all about, support and supporting leaders and making sure that we are providing environments where leaders can be sustainable and thrive for lasting success. I want to make sure that we are supporting you. Like, tell us what are some of the initiatives and the things that you're doing, some projects, let us know so that we can be aware and people can start to show up for those things for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I coming up in March, I'm really tackling this season of the year, working with leaders who are really struggling with how to use time as their superpower versus always looking at it as a thief or an enemy. And so I'm going to rerun a workshop. I try to do it about once a quarter. That's for anybody because we're all leaders. And it's called Take Back Your Clock. It's going to be on March 11th. It's a free workshop because it's all about time. It's like quick hit support. And then if people want some additional support, I kind of stay on after the first 30 or 45 minutes to do some hot seat coaching around individual, problems that people might be having. Because I'm really working on that empowerment coaching part for myself. Yeah. It's a good way for me to grow too. And then I also have some new leader supports that are going to launch for the summer, starting to launch some of those. So and these are particularly in the school leadership space. So new instructional coaches, new APs, new principals, new system level leaders. I have a small cohort that I'm going to be working with at each of those levels. And it's about your first 100 days. Like really developing strength in your first 100 days to make the work sustainable and to really get you off the ground. I have that coming up. And so if people are interested or know people who are interested, feel free to reach out and learn more about that. I've got about 10 spots in each of those cohorts. And then I also have a couple of spaces available for one-on-one support, whether you are a leader looking for support in your first year, or you're an org looking to kind of flesh out a first year support program for managers and leaders. I have some like custom support opportunities available each month. I think I have like 2 spots left for that in March. And then just like I'm always trying to use all the social media outlets, like just to serve in the place where people are on the daily. So you can find me there and let me know like what else you want to hear about, what else would be helpful. Because that's the creative part that I get to pursue is like creating the things that aren't an investment, because I was a leader for many years who could not and did not have the means, both org or personally, to like make an investment. And so I got my support from people who were creating great content and writing and podcasting and doing all the things. So I love to serve in that way too, and just love to have people in that community.
That's awesome. So tell us your social media handles, how we can reach out to you. Give us all those deets on here so people will know. It will also be in the comments, but I want them to hear it.
Sure. So on Instagram, I'm at Ashley R. Gorman. And then I'm on there quite a bit, usually once a day. And then I'm on LinkedIn too. And on LinkedIn, you just go to LinkedIn and search Ashley Gorman. I'm the first Ashley Gorman that pops up. I must have gotten in early on that game because there are lots of us out there. But yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
the same to you. What can I do to support the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that ask. Just the same with regards to, letting people know that that support is there. My focus is on leadership support. Like I can do development and those types of things, which are great, but you're going to get that because you're focused on those numbers. I'm focused on how do you get the support that you need so that you can sustain in the position that you're in, whether that's parenting, whether that's school leadership, whether that's executive, all of those spaces and things, whether it's just life. What are some strategic processes that we can come up with? How can I help you organize those thought processes, coaching through? And so just really just sharing that there is support out there. I am one of them. I love the fact that I've been able to show up in so many different spaces throughout my life, career, and personal, so that I can lend my leadership and leverage it in those different spaces. Like, oh, you need help on focusing on how to be a mom? Yeah, I kind of did that.
Yeah.
I'm still doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's bounce off, because I think what support also looks like to people as well is sometimes people are looking to those who have completed a task. You're never completing because you're still living. So you're always becoming. And so oftentimes the person is giving you support, they're only 4 or 5 steps ahead of you, but they've not completed it. And they're always going to just be like, oh, let me give you some context of the experience and let me help you navigate around that. But let me also tell you that you're never going to be finished. Like you're always going to be iterating. You're always going to be becoming, but having that support as you start to become through that that's there. And so that's the best way of being able to support me is letting people know support is there. And I'm one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, this has been amazing. It definitely was the highlight of my day. I do have to say this morning when I told my daughter that I have some recordings for the podcast, she's just so excited about all of these things, right? And so she's like, well, who are they? I'm like, you don't know them. And she's like, who are they? And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm always thinking like, what's her process of why? And I know she does the same thing when I ask her questions and I'm like, I asked her something, she goes to answer like as if I'm like, that's not what I asked you. Like you're already trying to think through. So she gets it honestly. And so I told her your name and she goes, but that's a really beautiful name. And I go, I will make sure that I tell her that.
Oh, thanks. Tell her I said thank you.
But it has been a true honor and a pleasure to have had this conversation and talk with you today. Like I am so excited about those individuals who will get the opportunity to hear and lean into this and really, really, really benefit. There's some great nuggets and tools that you communicated on here through our conversation. And so I'm really excited to see how this is going to play out in other individuals' lives. And even the times when I won't get to see, I'm sure that it will play out well.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much.
No problem.